If you haven't already started playing Sword of Convallaria, consider this your clarion call. It's time. Get to it. Download it. Right now. We'll wait. It's free. You don't have to play the gacha. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of turn-based strategy RPGs such as Sword of Convallaria, as well as the other types of content that I do, a like on this video, a subscription to the channel, and consideration of checking out my Patreon and my YouTube members would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So yes, Sword of Convallaria, specifically the Spiral of Destines, the single-player campaign roguelike-esque mode, pretty damn good. I just recently finished my very first run. If you missed any of that, you can find all of the stream VODs on the channel in the live section, and I hope that you maybe come and hang out for the next stream, so there's going to be plenty more of that. Finished it recently, and I gotta say, I'm real impressed. There's a lot to love about the Spiral of Destinies. I kind of figured there would be. However, having finished my first run, I do still have some questions and some concerns. So we're going to go through, we're going to talk about everything that I liked, and then we're going to talk about those questions, those concerns. I'd say we're going to talk about what I disliked, but there's not really a ton of that. Really, the only dislike I had is kind of wrapped up in the questions that I have for the end. So lots of positives and then just a few points of contention and concern that we'll talk about at the end. So make sure you stick around for that. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to go over here that I very much enjoy. So let's start. First of all, mechanically, Sword of Convallaria and the Spiral of Destinies feels absolutely phenomenal to play. I was concerned based off of the initial beta content and the closed beta tests and the demo and things like that, that this was going to be very much a, how do I want to put this? Baby easy for the sake of getting people to play so that they buy into the gacha type of game. Because it did feel very easy at first. The first 5-10 missions in the demo and the closed beta test were stupidly easy. Just if you can click buttons, you can clear these stages without a problem. Being a fairly hardcore strategy RPG fan, that was not exactly acceptable for me. However, that also very quickly changed. Partially because they changed balancing for the full release of the game, and partially because, I was just able to play way further with the full release. The Spiral of Destinies does absolutely scale up in difficulty and in mechanical complexity as you go. And that's before you even get into the idea of being able to publicize your guild rank in universe, thus increasing the world level, the challenge level of the game, and getting more challenging missions, higher level enemies, etc. to cut your teeth against. And that definitely made things challenging. The difference in challenge and difficulty from the beginning of the game to the end of the game was astronomical. It was not uncommon for me to lose 2-3 characters any given mission and have to actually step back and think, okay, how are we going to approach what it is that we're dealing with here? What types of team members am I going to bring? What types of skills do I need to make sure I'm bringing to the table? And what types of characters do I need to make sure that I have stamina on so that I can deploy them if I wind up needing them? That became a very real set of concerns, and I'm very happy about that, because I did have some questions about that going into the full release. As far as the overall mechanics are concerned, there feels like there's a very solid balance between kind of metagame, army management in town, managing fatigue, learning skills, putting people in training, recruiting new characters, doing forging and researching and all that type of stuff. It doesn't feel overbearing. It's something that I've seen a lot of people critique about modern Fire Emblem, is that it feels like you spend so much more time outside of missions in the Somniel or the monastery or what have you, talking to characters, doing social aspects, doing micromanaging, when at the end of the day, sometimes all you want to do is just get into the next mission and go play, right? It feels like there's a good balance of that with Sword of Convallaria. And then also, as you progress through the game and new mechanics are introduced, as well as new status effects and different types of attacks and characters and things, it never quite hit the point where it felt overwhelming. I personally think of games like Fire Emblem Heroes that started out fairly simple with its skills, added a little bit of complexity over time, which it needed, and now every single skill looks like a nightmare version of a modern Yu-Gi-Oh card, and it's just completely incomprehensible and bullshit. So, is that a concern for the future? It could be. That's always a possibility, especially when you have something like a live service or a gacha-style game, but Right now, mechanically, the game feels very solid and well put together, and while there's some busted stuff that you can utilize, such as a maneuver command that allows you to teleport across the battlefield and heal, the mechanics themselves all feel like you need to pay attention to them and make use of them, or you're going to get wrecked, especially if you're taking the chance to increase the game difficulty, which is awesome. Every mission feels unique and fun. Even if it's an objective that you've done before, there's always something new happening, a new type of terrain, a new story beat, a new type of character, some other gimmick going on. It always feels fresh while still allowing you to focus on the core strategic gameplay that you've been practicing and honing and building on over the entire course of a run, which is awesome. I can't stand when games get completely bogged down in gimmicks to try and make every single fight feel different. Like, have a core gameplay loop, iterate on it, and let the player get invested in it and begin mastering it. That's the best way to keep an audience engaged, as far as I'm concerned. For other aspects of the game, I mean, story, compelling, man. I took the Union route for my first run through. There's currently 3 routes available: the Union route, the Papal States route, and the Kingdom route. And even in that route, there was definitely a lot of choices that I had to make, with at least 2 potential endings that I was able to work towards. Now, I want to talk more about this at the end because it does start to lean into one of my major concerns with the game. But as it stands, I was very invested in the characters. I was absolutely curious about where the story was going. And of course, having only played one ending of one route, I have a lot of questions left over about just the world and the events that led to where we are now and how things could change if we choose different routes, which makes me very much compelled to go and check out not just different endings on the Union route, but the Papal States and Kingdoms routes as well. To say nothing of the fact that we're going to be getting other routes over time as the game continues development, which should hopefully add some very interesting different perspectives for the world as a whole, if not specifically about the conflict that we've been going through, which is really cool. Really, though, the characters are what sell the game. Having characters like Gloria, who is obviously, of course, the stalwart paladin, kind of an Agrius XP if you're familiar in any way, really, with Final Fantasy Tactics, but who has a lot of depth, a lot of emotional vulnerability, determination, sadness, grief, anger. She embodies a lot, and she's just one character that pushes the story forward. You got Prince Lutfi, who is a very interesting enigmatic character. The way that stories unfold and affect the characters that you've grown to know and love, like Mytha, Rauia. There's a lot of fun stuff going on there, including just some of the side characters who I'm hoping I get to know more about when I do other routes. Really, that was one of my biggest concerns about the game during the closed beta test, was how was the story and the character writing going to present itself? Because it felt a little generic at first, but the characters and the story and the world absolutely grow into themselves over time, and I'm now 100% invested in learning more about them. The music, absolutely phenomenal. That really should not be a surprise, seeing as how we have music from the same composer who did Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre, as well as many other games. Absolutely top-notch stuff that has immediately cemented itself as some of my favorite gaming music in the business. The pixel art and the graphics never got tired, especially once we started encountering more named characters with really flashy special attacks that had like a surprising amount of punch and oomph to them. I really enjoyed that. And even just certain effects, such as zooming across the battlefield with the camera to see what was going on in different sectors of the story, or just having a world map where we could see how different forces were moving around, different cutscenes with characters. It all felt really, really polished and well done, and it added a little extra zip to what was otherwise already a very solid gameplay experience. As far as the pace was concerned, it always felt like we were moving along, and while I will say it feels a little long to run a full campaign when you're supposed to be in sort of this like roguelite sort of thing where you do a bunch of different runs, it took a long time to clear one run. It was like, 58 weeks, I think, for my first ending, which was way longer than I expected it to be. And while that'll get streamlined over time as maybe I start encountering recurring story elements or just understanding more about different intricate systems and can blast through them on a little bit more kind of root memory, it still does take quite a while. So if you're hoping to just get a quick run in one evening before you have work in the morning, that ain't gonna happen, man. It's an investment. You're gonna have to put a solid week into it at least. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely not what I was expecting when I heard that the story had roguelite elements. That said, the actual pacing of the story and events that were going down felt great. There was always something interesting happening, always new events occurring, always new characters introducing themselves and expanding on the world lore and the events and our understanding of them. It felt great to play through, and I can only imagine that the other routes are going to be just as good based on the feedback that people in my chat were giving me as I was completing my Union route. Really, the game feels great. That's why I said at the beginning, if you haven't decided to start checking out Sword of Convallaria yet, either just because, you don't have the time, you put it on your backlog, maybe you're wary of the gacha elements, or you're just not a fan of a game that's on mobile and on PC. There's a bunch of different reasons that I've seen people give as to why they haven't tried this game yet. But take it from me, and take it from a lot of people in my chat who were very steadfast about the fact that they weren't going to play it until they saw me playing it and having a good time with it, and now they're diehard fans. There is quality here. You do not have to touch the gacha side of things at all if you don't want to. You can just have an extremely solid single-player experience that is a blast to play through. With that said, I want to talk about a couple of the things that I have issues with here. First of all, the way that I was able to get to my ending made me feel a little bit railroaded. If you don't want any spoilers for the ending of the Union route, this is your opportunity to skip ahead. I will have a timestamp on screen for my final thoughts that you can skip to if you do not want to hear this section, or you can close off the video if you want. By all means, protect yourself. But we're going to talk about some story spoilers here for the Union route really quick, so bear that in mind. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. So, I was really trying to get the Gloria ending, because it seemed like there would be an ending that would allow us to put our full faith in Paladin Gloria and pursue some sort of ideal ending alongside her, with an alliance between the Union and the Sword of Convallaria ourselves to try and make a better world of peace, right? For this world of peace. It's the subtitle of the game. And yet, no matter what I did, it seemed like everything kept going wrong, which is fine. Best laid plans of mice and men oft go awry. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. The path to hell is paved with good intentions. All of these sayings exist for a reason. So yeah, maybe, despite all of our best efforts, things just go to shit. Maybe because of our own actions, maybe because of the actions of other characters that we can't surmount, whatever. But it seemed like I was being given a choice and then just not being allowed to execute on it. And I was afraid at first that I wasn't able to get the quote-unquote good ending with Gloria for the Union route because I had failed one particular meta-objective, to capture a particular keep earlier on in the story. However, as I was musing about this, and I was kind of lamenting the fact that I was clearly being put on a story path that I didn't necessarily want to be on, or at least I was trying to avoid, people in my chat started coming to me and saying, well, no, it turns out we did this same exact thing. I don't know what I did wrong, but I wound up on the same path that you're on. It feels like I should have been able to avoid it. It feels like I should have been able to side with Gloria. And then a couple of folks started telling me that it seems like you are actually railroaded towards a worse ending, quote unquote, your first run through any of the particular story paths for any of the 3 factions. Now, on that story path, you still have at least one option for me to go between 2 different endings on the Union path, and I chose one that's apparently universally considered to be the worst ending. We're going to talk about that because I don't agree with that sentiment at all, but it seems like the idea is that the devs want you to experience a worse ending to make it more gratifying when you go back and play back through and get a better ending, or give you that drive to keep playing and go back through and get a quote-unquote better ending. And that's fair enough, right? Like, there's a certain thing to be said, especially if we look back at games like Tactics Ogre Reborn, or just Tactics Ogre in general, really. It's very hard to get the right ending on your first playthrough if you have no idea what you're doing. Same thing for Triangle Strategy, which I actually did. I got the Golden Route ending my first playthrough blind, which was very satisfying, but most people are not going to get that, and it's going to leave you with that feeling of, okay, this was a good story, and I'm happy, maybe, with how things wound up, but it's clear that there's something else, something better that I could achieve here. So I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to get a better result this time. That is compelling, and that is solid game design. But the thing with those other games, with Tactics Ogre and Triangle Strategy, you're able to get the best ending if you pay attention and actually think about what you're doing and maybe get a little lucky. If it's true that you literally are just not able to get the best ending on any given route your first time through it in Sword of Convallaria just by being savvy, paying attention, making the right decisions, because the devs want you to get that feeling of, well, this ending was good, but I could have done better, and clearly I messed something up, even if you didn't, that kind of sucks. I'm not a huge fan of that, and that's one of my biggest problems here. Now, of course, got to take this with a pinch of salt. This is just things that I'm hearing from people in my chat. There's nothing saying that they are necessarily correct, but it certainly feels like they are, because I really don't think I messed up anything that would have allowed me to get a Gloria ending. Now, this is where one of my kind of second issues of 3 comes in. Once you finish a route, you are given a number of essentially anchor points, if you're familiar with Tactics Ogre, that you can start a new run from that will let you skip forward a little bit in the story. This is very familiar if you, or should be very familiar to you anyway, if you're familiar with the world system from Tactics Ogre. However, each of these anchor points, or most of them at least, specifically call out making it easier to achieve certain story routes, making it easier to befriend Gloria, making it easier to get the Union to work with you, making it easier to side with Prince Lutfi. And that's weird to me, because again, it kind of hammers home this idea of, even if you do everything that you feel like you're able to in any given run, there's a chance that you just haven't unlocked the ability to get the ending that you're going for, even if it feels like it's there. So now you have to play it through again. Like that, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not super jazzed about it. And that's even coming from someone who was planning on doing multiple runs of this campaign to begin with, because I want to see all the different story outcomes. I want to see all the different endings. Like, again, spoiler territory here, but at the end of my Union run, I decided to defy Prince Lutfi, partially because I felt like I'd been manipulated onto a path that I didn't want to be on, which makes sense for Lutfi's character. So I actually wound up dueling him and killed him, which people in my chat say led to the worst ending, which I disagree with. I do disagree with that. The way the epilogue played out made it very clear that things were moving in a solid direction with a union between the Union and sort of Convallaria, them having rooted out all of the sort of negative, corrupt influences in the Union, and now the Holy Order was able to move forward and do what they needed to do. To me, that seemed good. Not the best, but not the worst either. People can disagree. Let me know in the comments if you do. But the idea being, now I need to go through and play and not kill Lutfi and see what happens. That's fine, but I also want to go through and play the Union route again to take the Gloria route and see how that shakes out. And my concern is how much replayability there's going to be within a particular route to get all of those different branching paths and all the different endings associated with them. I haven't obviously gone through for a second run yet. I'm recording this right after I finished my first run, so, I need to take it with a grain of salt and see how things shake out once I start a new run, but I am concerned about longevity of content if you're trying to get every different ending and see all the different results, are going to be playing through any given route 3 or 4, maybe more times. That is compounded by my third major issue, which is one that I've been talking about from the very beginning, ever since I first played the demo of Sword of Convallaria, and this is where spoilers have ended. If you're skipping ahead to the timestamp, welcome back, it's good to have you. My third major concern is the supply of Keys of Destiny. I've already seen people in my chat saying that they've gone through 3 or 4 different story routes now, and they're in a position where they can only get 1 or 2 keys a day, and as such are being time-gated from continuing the story route that they are on now, after having gone through a bunch and used a bunch of the other easier to acquire keys in the process. This is the number one thing that I'm worried about. If the devs want you to be able to go through, or to feel encouraged to go through and play the game in the Spiral of Destinies multiple times to see all these different endings and all of these different story routes, and you're going to hit a point 3, 4, 5 runs in where suddenly you're down to like 1 or 2 free keys a day, and you can't play as long as you want to encourage you to buy keys, that's going to be it's going to be a problem, man. And I maintain something that I've said before in pretty much every video talking about this. You can use the Hope Luxite item that you get from playing the campaign, from just logging in, completing quests related to doing the campaign, etc., etc. You can get a bunch of this resource that you would normally use to summon characters and just use that to buy keys if you want to. And you know what? Fair enough. Because if you're not worried about pulling gacha characters, you're going to have so much extra Luxite to go into the shop and buy keys with, it's not even funny. But at the end of the day, that time gating is going to be something that exists to try and encourage at least a few people to go into the cash shop and drop real money to be able to continue playing the story. And up to a certain point, fair enough, because it is free, right? And to me, the Spiral of Destinies as it exists is something that is easily worth 30, 40, 50 bucks, right? Full-ish game price, maybe like a AA game price. That's fine. You know, if I was buying a bunch of keys to keep playing the story and got up to that price point, fair enough, right? But A, not everyone's going to agree with that or agree with the price point that I think is fair. And B, it doesn't change the fact that that is an intentional design choice that has been worked into the game that feels a little manipulative, a little malevolent. And I'm not a huge fan of that, right? Now, I'm not here to assign all sorts of negative blame to the dev team, right? They clearly have a particular design goal in mind, seeing the success of all sorts of different gacha games. You look at anything that MiHoYo has done with, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Honkai Impact the Third, or whatever the hell came before Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero now, things like Fire Emblem Heroes, or, God, what are some of the other ones? Like Girls Frontline, and Arc Knights, right? And then there's like the AFK Journey or whatever the hell it is, and of course Raid Shadow Legends and all these other things. Like, there is success to be had there, and they could have just chased that idea without ever having this whole fleshed out single player system with all these different routes and very high quality aspects to it. They didn't have to do that, and I respect that they did. So I don't mind them wanting to be able to monetize that a little bit while still having it be free to play at the start to get people in and check it out. Fair enough. But to me, I think having the entire gacha side of the game that we know there's going to be so many people who buy into, who wail out for, on top of having battle passes, on top of having skins, and limited time events, and all this other stuff, I don't think you needed to get that extra little twist of attempted revenue from time gating the ability to play the single player game behind these keys. So I'm very concerned about how that's going to play out as we continue to go through the lifespan of the game. New routes are added, new story paths are added. Will the income of keys that we get for playing the game and that we get for like logging in daily and everything keep up, or are people going to be pushed more and more towards buying them? That's a future that I don't think is going to be good, and I think will absolutely have a negative impact on the game. Now, those are my major concerns, but overall, my impressions have been extremely positive. The story, the music, the gameplay mechanics, the character writing, the art, the graphics, the overall feel of the game is great. There's some issues, of course. There's a lot of bugginess with using a controller, which the devs have said they're actively working on trying to refine and make better for the console release, so I can forgive that to a degree, even if it is annoying, because I prefer to use controllers, then it breaks and it doesn't work right and yada yada yada, but it still feels great to play. The game has been an absolute joy. I'm always excited and looking forward to it whenever I'm going to be booting up for another stream, and people seem to be having a blast with it, chatting with me about the story, talking about character motivations, being excited about what characters they've pulled because they can't wait to bring them into the campaign, talking about the differences between the different story routes that they took versus what I took versus what other people in chat took. It's been a really, really positive experience, and I'm so happy that that's the case, because this is one of those projects that absolutely could have flown way too close to the sun and had way too great ambitions for what the team was able to pull off, but it seems like they did it, and that is sick. My concerns aside, I do absolutely think if you either have a good phone that you're willing to play it on, you don't mind doing some mobile gaming, or you're on PC and you're able to download it through Steam or its own native launcher, check it out. If you're a console player, it will be coming to consoles at some point in the hopefully near future. Check it out then. It doesn't harm you to do so. It's completely free. And I think it's a very good chance that you're going to find a really solid single-player strategy RPG experience for you to sink your teeth into. Because I absolutely have. I'm going to be playing far, far more of Sword of Convallaria going forward, all on stream. Next thing I'm going to be doing is starting to check out the gacha side of things, as I have heard that there's actually a ton of really interesting character and story development in the gacha side of this game, as well as the fact that I need to play through a certain section of it to be able to make a guild for the community, which is something else that we will absolutely be doing. Check out the Discord, find the link to that in the description. I'll be coordinating that with my mods once I have a guild set up so that people can start joining it. I have to see how that works. I don't really know yet. But I've absolutely been loving my time with Sword of Convallaria. I can't wait to keep making more content for it. And please, if there's a particular type of content that you'd like to see me do in terms of videos, let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to do so post-haste. With all that said, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.